To put together your sculpture, you're going to need some pieces of foam board, scissors, a glue stick, your sculpture template already painted, and your sketchbook with your patterns already planned. The first thing that you'll need to do is cut out all of the shapes from your sculpture template. Once your shapes are all cut out, you're going to alter all of your shapes. 3 of your shapes are going to be altered by cutting the edges. You want to keep your shapes about the same size. You just want to change them so they're not all rectangles or squares. The other 3 shapes you're going to alter by ripping the edges. Again, you want to keep your shapes around the same size, but we don't want all of the shapes to be exactly the same shape. We don't want them to all be rectangles and squares. So we're going to change some of the shapes by cutting them and some of the shapes by ripping the edges. Once your shapes are all altered, you're ready to add your patterns. Hopefully you've planned out some of the patterns that you want to use in your workbook. The next thing that you want to do is use some paint pens to draw patterns on at least 2 of the shapes. You can add patterns to as many shapes as you'd like in as many different colors as you'd like, but you need to have patterns on at least 2 of your shapes. Try to use a color that's going to be contrasting with the color of your shape so that your patterns stand out. Once your patterns are added, you're ready to assemble your sculpture. It's good to first make a plan and figure out where you're going to lay all of your shapes before you start any of your gluing. When you're ready to glue, you're going to use some of the pieces of foam board to add some relief to your sculpture so that all your shapes are not just sitting flat on top of each other. So you're going to first glue a piece or maybe even 2 pieces of foam core to the piece of cardstock. And then in between each of your shapes, you're going to add at least 1 to maybe 2 pieces of the foam board so that your shapes are all separated by that foam board. That's what's going to give your sculpture the 3-dimensionality. You want to overlap your shapes or stack them somewhat, but you want to make sure that you're not completely covering the shapes that are on the bottom with the shapes that are on top. You want to still be able to visibly see all of your shapes in your sculpture. Also, try to pay attention to which shapes are lighter and which shapes are darker, which shapes have patterns, which shapes don't have patterns, which shapes have cut edges, and which shapes have the ripped edges. You want to add some variety to your piece, so try not to stack all of your pattern edges, shapes on top of each other. Try not to stack all of your ripped, torn edges on top of each other. You want to spread it out and try to alter the different kinds of shapes so that you have some variety in your piece. That'll make it more interesting to look at. After a few more alterations and gluing all of my shapes down, my relief sculpture is complete.